Hi, fantasy readers. This is Karyne Norton, your fellow book binger, and you are listening to the Finding Fantasy Reads podcast, where you can test out a new fantasy story every single week to find your next favorite author. Today's story features a determined young girl relying on her hope for peace. It's written by Anthea Sharp, a USA Today bestselling author who grew up in an enchanted forest. The library was her second home, but when she later discovered books weren't the only portals to magical worlds, she spent several years immersed in computer games. Unsurprisingly, her best-selling Feyland series is a portal fantasy, where a high-tech game opens a gateway to the treacherous realm of fairy. She's currently writing The Darkwood Chronicles, a series rich in fairy tale elements, secret magic, and a touch of romance. Stick around to the end, or check out today's show notes to see where you can find more from Anthea. For now, please enjoy The Tree of Fate and Wishes by Anthea Sharp. The sound of her parents' voices woke Emer Quinn from dreams filled with blood and ashes. Low and urgent, their conversation penetrated the curtained-off sleeping area of their stone-walled dwelling. Emer lay still, straining to hear over the quiet crackle of the peat fire in the main room. "What did the council say?" Emer's mother asked.
"It's to be war."
Her father sounded weary.
"Bring my sword and a whetstone, Grania. We march to battle in 4 days.
4 days? Emer sat up, her heart racing. Yes, the clans often went to war, but it was too soon after their last clash, where her father had been sorely injured. And her bright and laughing cousin, Sean, had been slain, a blade through the chest silencing his merry voice forever. "Already?" Emer's mother echoed her thoughts. "But Cormac, your wound. You cannot lead the warriors out."
"A chieftain leads his men into battle."
His voice was hard. "But your second in command—"
"Was Sean, and his replacement is still untested. Ask me no more. I'll not shirk my duty."
Careful not to disturb her sleeping siblings, Emer rose, the flagstones cold under her bare feet. Her mother alone could not convince her father, but perhaps he would listen to their combined voices. She wrapped a woolen shawl about her shoulders and pushed open the curtain, blinking in the lantern light. Her mother looked up from the tabletop, caution and hope in her eyes. "Please, father," Emer said, "can the battle not wait?" Although the deep slice in Cormac's thigh was healing, it had sapped him of much of his strength. On the field of war, that weakness would spell his death.
"Those upstarts graze their cattle upon our summer fields,"
he said, making a fist upon the table.
"Already we've waited too long. We'll drive them off and add their herds to ours, which will add to your dowry, lass."
She did not want a dowry bought with the clan's lives, especially not her father's life. Emer loved him, loved her whole family, despite the hardness that came upon Cormac when the mantle of chieftain lay heavy upon his shoulders. Her mother, Grania, trod the balance well between duty and tender care, and her younger brother and sister were the moon and stars to Emer. She could not bear the thought of losing any of them. "We can move our cattle," she tried again.
"These are our lands,"
her father said.
"Ours by right of tradition, and force if need be."
"Go back to bed." Her mother's eyes were sad. There would be no winning the argument that night. Or any night. Emer withdrew to the straw-stuffed mattress, but sleep did not come. The clan would go to war in 4 days. The words echoed in her mind, along with a rising sense of urgency. She must do something. But the chieftain's daughter did not have the power to command the clan, however much she might wish it. Wish. The thought sparked through her, and with it came a rush of hope. She could not change the course the council had decided upon, but she could invoke the old gods. They had the power to avert the coming war. Some distance beyond the boundaries of her clan's territory lay a sacred spring. Above the spring, a hawthorn tree grew, where for generations people had come to leave their wishes, tied to the branches in the form of cloth strips and long pieces of thread. In all seasons, the tree was aflutter with color and movement, the cloth braiding and unbraiding in the wind, the strands dancing in the breeze. At the wishing tree, a girl could perform small magics, beseeching the powers to grant her heart's desire, whether it be love or vengeance or greed or peace. Above the hawthorn tree rose a hill crowned with a circle of standing stones. It was a place of power and peril. The old gods slept there, and the fair folk were known to dance in the ring. Any mortal who offended them brought trouble down upon her head and upon her entire clan. One did not go lightly to the wishing tree. But go she must, for the specter of war panted at her shoulder like a wolfhound, fierce and insatiable, sharp teeth, hungry for her father's blood. The next day, once her chores were finished, Emer told her mother she was going to gather sweet herbs by the waterside. She did not mention that she wasn't going to the nearby stream, but instead would make for the sacred spring. "Don't stray too far," her mother said, giving her a stern look. "I'll be careful." Emer fingered the small dagger strapped at her waist. She collected her basket and, when her mother's back was turned, slipped an oatcake inside. One must always bring an offering to the gods when making a wish. Then she donned her blue cloak, kissed her brother and sister each upon the cheek, and set out. At first, she kept a decorous pace, but as soon as she was out of sight of the ring fort surrounding their village, she gathered up her skirts and ran. The sun shone down, the morning dew quickly drying from the grasses. The wind off the coast whipped her cloak back. She could not smell the sea. The shore and its tall gray cliffs were too far away, but she felt the weight of the ocean within the breeze. When she tired, she slowed to catch her breath, then ran once more. She passed the stone cairn marking her clan's boundary and went more warily, though with no less haste. For a time, swallows kept her company, darting and turning above her head. But when she came closer to the spring, they flew away. The wind calmed too, and Emer spotted the weathered circle of stones on the hill above the sacred spring. She veered so she would not come too close to that circle, adjusting her path until the gnarled branches of the hawthorn tree came between her and the hill. It was in full bloom, the flowers like snow upon the green thorns. Between the drifts of white, she spied the colorful tatters of strips tied to the branches. Tens and tens of wishes, left to dance in the wind and flutter beneath the stars, sending their silent prayers into the world. At the foot of the hawthorn tree, the spring lay quiet and dark. A trickle of water wove around root and stone, finally gathering itself into a small stream and meandering away around the base of the hill. The air was thick with power and possibility. Emer stood a moment, quieting her heavy breaths. She had run far and fast to reach the tree, but it would not do to approach it panting and disheveled. The old gods deserved more than that. "Ka!" She started as a raven took flight from the top of the tree. Guardedly, Emer watched it sweep across the sky. One raven was a portent, but not a dire one. 3 ravens, however, meant war. Stepping carefully, she approached the tree. No more dark shapes stirred in its branches. Still, she felt invisible eyes watching her, the weight of the place folding about her. Sunlight filtered through the hawthorn branches, laying patterns of light and shadow on the grasses. "Greetings," she said softly. "I come with a peaceful heart to ask a wish." For a time, she had served as second apprentice to Orla, the clan's wise woman. From her, Emer had learned a few small bits of magic. "Magic is action and intent bound together with ritual," Orla had said when Emer asked where the power came from. "Sometimes the gods listen. Sometimes they don't. Every one of us holds some power inside, but not everyone is willing to use it." For this, Emer was willing, though she knew it carried a cost. She unslung the basket from her arm and drew out the oatcake, then laid her offering upon a flat stone near the spring's edge. "Please accept this small gift," she said. Her only answer was the breeze stirring the hanging bits of cloth tied to the thorny branches. Here, beneath the tree, the sweet, dusty scent of the flowers filled her nose. Sitting, Emer worked a length of blue thread free from the hem of her cloak. She snipped it off with her small blade, then brought the thread to her lips and breathed her wish upon the strand. Once, twice, thrice, she whispered the words, blowing them against the thread until it was washed in the warmth of her breath. "Let this war be averted. Let my father grow strong and well. Let us know a time of peace, not bloodshed, between the clans." She looked up into the tree, finding a spot to tie her wish. Bees hummed among the petals, their song sharpening as they took notice of the large, clumsy human reaching in to disturb their work. Though she was expecting it, the first sting on her hand made her yelp. Still, she did not withdraw, but looped her string about the dark wood of a small branch. The second sting, this time on her finger, made her breath hiss between her teeth, but she tied the first knot in the thread. The third sting was worse than the other two combined, landing in the center of her palm. Eyes blurred with tears, Emer could barely see to wind the thread about itself. Breathing hard, she finished securing her small magic to the tree. The moment she let go, the wind lifted the blue strand, and her heart rose at the sight, despite the pain pulsing through her hands. Perhaps Danu would hear her wish whispering in the breeze. Perhaps the fair folk would carry it to the mother goddess's ears. Perhaps all was not lost. When Emer returned home, hands daubed with mud and a basket full of fresh herbs, her mother gave her a hard look, but said nothing. That evening, Emer even had the heart to tease and sing with her siblings before the fire, and went to bed with a spark of hope in her heart. Her dreams extinguished that spark. The sky was full of ash, and dead bodies lay strewn upon the trampled grass. She walked among them, too afraid to gaze upon their faces, tears scorching her eyes. "No!" Emer woke with a start, and clutched her blanket up to her chin. One bit of magic was not enough. She must return to the wishing tree. 2 more days, 2 more chances to strengthen the power of her wish before death came to eat them with its red, insatiable mouth. I will avert this fate. She put all the force of her soul into the thought, holding it close until morning. A new day and warm porridge for breakfast renewed Emer's resolve. "Can I check the weirs for trout today?" she asked her mother. Grania gave her a long look, but finally nodded. "Keep out of trouble, mind. I'm not slipping away to meet with a boy, if that's what you fear." Her mother stirred the pot. "I saw the flowers young Finn brought you last week." Emer felt a blush warm her cheeks. He'd given the same to Kate the week before. I won't let the likes of young Finn turn my head. Though he was a handsome fellow. This last thought, however, her mother did not need to hear. "Very well, but be home in time for supper, especially if there's fish." Emer kissed her mother on the cheek, then went to fetch her cloak and basket. This time, she tucked a small piece of honeycomb in alongside her oatcake. As she had the day before, as soon as she was out of sight of the ring fort, she ran. When she grew too winded, she stopped at various points to catch her breath. The hollow where bracken fern grew, the hillock overlooking a rock-strewn plain, the thicket of thorny gorse. At last she came in sight of the hawthorn tree, the stone circle above standing sentinel. Clouds gathered overhead, and the sun slipped behind them. The air suddenly carried a chill. She paused to smooth her hair and catch her breath. Then, summoning her courage, she proceeded to the dark seep of the spring. "I ask your indulgence again," she said to the spirits of the place, and to the old gods. "Please accept this offering." She laid the cake upon the flat stone and put the honeycomb beside it. Her wish for peace strong within her heart, she unraveled another length of blue thread from her cloak. "Let this war be averted," she said. "Let my father grow strong and well. Let us know a time of peace between the clans." The wish welled up from her heart. She could not bear to lose her father as they had lost Sean, now buried beneath the stones. Tears escaped the corners of her eyes, and she caught them upon the thread, letting her sorrow darken the strand. A soft breeze tickled her cheek, as if in sympathy. Perhaps the gods were listening. When Emer reached to fasten her wish upon the branch, she drew in a startled breath and froze. There, beside her first wish, was tied a length of red thread. Fear tickled the back of her neck, and she slowly turned, peering out from the shadows beneath the tree. Was a warrior of the enemy clan lurking nearby, ready to run her through? Or worse yet, take her hostage? As if her fright had called it forth, a raven burst from the branches overhead, cawing sharply. Emer's heart pounded like a drum, all her senses shouting at her to run, to abandon her wish and flee back to the safety of her own clan's boundary. But no. Even if she was about to be taken, she must tie her wish to the tree. As if from nowhere, a frigid wind sprang up. The air about her turned bitter cold, and Emer's breath plumed out in a white cloud before her face. Her fingers ached as frost swirled around them. Moving as quickly as she could, she reached to the branch. It took several tries, her numb fingers more like twigs barely under her command than her own flesh. But at last, a second blue thread hung beside the first. The cold faded into a warm breeze, and her wishes stirred, tangling and twining with the red thread, scarlet like blood, blue like the sky. What did it mean? She shivered and backed away from the blossom-laden tree. A few petals blew down, dancing away in the wind. And then she was away too, running and running until she reached the cairn that marked the boundary of safety. Her hands still ached with a bone-deep cold. It was growing twilight when she returned home, fingers chapped with cold, 4 fat trout from the weirs wrapped in leaves and tucked into her basket. Again, her mother gave her a hard look, but did not press. After supper, Grania and Cormac spoke of the coming battle, of the readiness of the clan's warriors, of the victory that must surely be theirs. Emer lay awake, unwilling to fall asleep. When at last she did, ash and blood colored her dreams once more. When she woke in the light of morning, her throat was clogged with unshed tears. Tomorrow, the battle would come. Almost, she gave up in despair. What good were her feeble wishes against the will of her father and the clan's council? But stubbornness made her rise and dress, and once more ask her mother if she might go out. this time to pick nettles. "I want you close today," Grania said. "The men are mustering, and the wind tastes of a blade's edge." "Please," Emer's voice caught on the word. "I must go." 3 was a powerful number. Everyone knew that. She must go one more time to the sacred spring, work her small magic, and tie her wish upon the tree. "No," her mother shook her head. "I need you to mind your siblings and keep them out from underfoot." It was a request Emer couldn't refuse, and she would not take her brother and sister with her to the tree. Even if they could keep up, it was far too dangerous, especially with the evidence that someone else had been making their own wishes. Some enemy, wishing for her clan's downfall. The sun crept across the sky, and Emer tended her siblings at the hearth, starting a rabbit stew and sweeping the floor. Late afternoon skimmed the sky with silver, when at last her mother returned from helping provision the warriors. "You've done well," Grania said. "You may have your freedom until sunset, but stay close and be home by dark." "Thank you." Emer kissed her mother upon the cheek, hoping Grania hadn't noticed her lack of promises to obey. She would not be able to reach the sacred spring and make the return journey before twilight lay its shadow over the land. It would be well dark by the time Emer reached home, and she surely would face her mother's wrath. But there was no help for it. She must make her final wish. When Grania wasn't looking, Emer tucked an oat cake into her pouch, along with a small bottle of elderberry wine. She bid farewell to her siblings, summoned a smile for her mother, and slipped out the door. It seemed the land fought her as she ran, her skirt tangling in the gorse, her shoes sinking into an unexpected bog, thatched clumps of grass making her stumble. At last, the hill above the spring rose before her, dark against the dusk-lit sky, the stone circle crouched atop it. Emer picked the clinging burrs from her skirt and shook it out, then approached the hawthorn tree. A bird rustled in the upper branches, causing a drift of petals, but she could not make out what it was. Please, not a raven. A third one was proof that Morrigan, goddess of death and destruction, would bring war to the clan on the morrow. But war was not a certainty. Not yet. Clinging to that handful of hope, Emer laid her oatcake upon the flat stone. She was not sure if she should pour out the bottle of wine as a libation, or leave all the dark liquid within the bottle. After a moment's hesitation, she unstoppered it and poured a small measure upon the ground, then settled the bottle beside the cake. "I bring you my small offerings," she said into the oncoming night. "Please grant my wish." The bird rustled once more among the branches, but still did not take flight and show itself. Afraid of what she would see, she glanced up to where her first 2 wishes hung. A second red thread was tied beside her wish from yesterday, and her heart clenched. She stared at the scrap of red fluttering defiantly from the thorny branch. Anger flashed hotly through her. She wanted to turn and shout into the gathering twilight, demand that whoever was there show themselves. How dare the enemy come here and tangle their wishes with her own? She should abandon her foolish hope for peace, and instead use her last wish for her clan's victory in the coming battle. Emer closed her eyes, her heart torn. The memory of her cousin Sean's death rose within her, searing and futile. It would be easy to draw on that dark, bitter well of emotion, to push it into the magic and turn her hopes from peace to war. The third wish was always the strongest. Hadn't the interlopers stolen their lands, and even invaded the sacred space of the wishing tree? Perhaps her father was right. The only way to respond was with force. Their warriors were brave and strong. With a heartfelt plea to the Morrigan, surely her clan would prevail. But victory came with a price. She could not wish for her father to lie upon the field, dead face staring sightless at the sky. When she opened her eyes, she saw that the first star had appeared, a speck of light in the ash-gray sky. It was a confirmation of what was in her heart. Despite the darkest night, there would always be stars. Tears pricking her eyes even as the star pricked the cloak of the sky, Emer unraveled a final length of blue thread from her hem. This time, after snipping it off, she did not sheathe her small blade. Her first wish had been imbued with her breath. The second, her tears. Now, it was time for her blood. Hands steady, she set the tip of the knife against her thumb and pressed until a bright drop welled. Holding her wish close to her heart, she wound the thread about her thumb and let the blood seep in. "Let this war be averted," she said, the truth of each word ringing from the bottom of her soul. "Let my father become strong again. Let there be peace between the clans." In the silvery twilight, she reached overhead and fastened her wish to the tree. Her thumb throbbed, and the thorns on the branch scored her hands, sharp and biting, as the wishing tree took its own blood sacrifice from her. Emer bit her lip against the pain and finished tying the knot. The breeze sprang up, pulling the thread from her fingers to dance in the wind, braiding itself with blue, red, blue, red. She withdrew her hands, the backs etched with burning scratches. Above her, the bird took flight. For a moment, all Emer could see was dark feathers, and her heart sank like a stone in deep water. A raven. War and death would fall upon her clan on the morrow. Then she caught a glimpse of white feathers among the black. As the bird flew away, the burbling call of a magpie reached her ears. She went to her knees in relief, the dampness soaking through her skirt. But she did not care. She had done all she could. Now she must make her way home in the dark and face her punishment for disobeying. Hard words and a willow cane switching at the least. But if the gods and spirits heard her wish, it was a small price to pay. Under the pale light of the stars and a sickle moon, she made what haste she could. But it was still 2 hours after sundown when she at last approached the ring fort. "Who is it?" The guard at the gate lifted his torch, and she saw that young Finn was on watch. "'Tis I, Emer," she said wearily. "Let me in." "Oh, your parents are sore," he said, standing aside. "What have you been up to out there in the dark?" He peered into the night, as if expecting to see she'd been keeping company with someone. "Wishing," she said. "For victory, I hope." His smile was white and filled with anticipation. "Tomorrow will be a glorious battle. Give me a kiss for luck." She brushed her lips against his cheek, but while his heart beat with red blood, hers pulsed with spring water. Peace, peace. When she stepped through the door of their home, she was met with her mother's cold gaze and her father's face set in anger. "I know," she said, holding up her poor, abused hands. "I deserve whatever punishment you care to give me. But believe me that I have done what I had to do." "To bed." Her father pointed to the mattress, where her brother and sister already slept. "Your punishment will come, but not this night. We must all rest and make ready for tomorrow's battle." Emer bent her head and hurried to prepare for bed. Whatever befell her clan on the morrow, it was in fate's hands. Emer awoke the next morning with no memory of dreams. Pre-dawn light sifted in through the window openings, and she felt the first stirrings of hope. Then she turned over and saw her father strapping on his boiled leather breastplate. So, the warriors had not all woken with their desire for battle extinguished. Surely the gods would act. Her dreams had not carried blood and ash. Did that mean the war was averted? Quietly, she rose and dressed. She went out and helped her mother serve the men and few fighting women mugs of hot herbal brew. Soon after, the warriors were ready, massing at the front gate. Emer tasted bitter hopelessness. I am going with the healers, she told her mother, as the non-combatants prepared to depart with the fighters. When her father fell, she would be there to tend him. Emer, what? I am going. She grasped her mother's arms. I must. Granya's dark eyes studied her. Finally, she took her daughter's face between her calloused hands. Be careful, was all she said, though her expression was full of love and fear, and questions that Emer could not answer. Emer shouldered a pack of supplies and set out along with the healers. In front of them, the younger warriors called cheerfully to one another, while the older men, like her father, went grimly forward. They at least knew that battles brought death as well as glory. Too soon they reached the field where the chieftains had agreed to meet. The sun had risen and clawed away the mist shrouding its face. It was too beautiful a morning for death, and Emer swallowed back the salt of her tears. At least she would be there to bear witness as her clansmen fell. Her heart hardened against the gods as she saw the black line of opposing warriors waiting across the field. There would be no peace. Grief aching through her body, Emer set down the pack she'd been carrying. Despite herself, her feet carried her forward until she stood at the front lines. Get back, young Finn told her, with a fierce look. Then the war pipes began to play, wailing loud as though giving voice to her anguish. Across the field, Emer glimpsed a red cloak. No! She did not realize she was screaming the word as she sprinted forward. Open sky and green grass lay before her, and the faces of her enemies. Dimly, she was aware of a handful of warriors following behind her. The opposing clan stirred, a group of them also moving onto the field. Come back! Her father called, but she could not. There, as if in a mirror, a dark-haired girl in a red cloak ran across the field toward Emer, her face full of sorrow, full of hope. Behind her came her clan's warriors, until they were halted by a sharp command from their chieftain. Closer Emer came to the stranger girl, closer and closer still, until they met in the middle of the field. You! Emer gasped out. You were wishing. Tell me what your wish was. I wished for peace, the other girl said. My name is Deirdre. I am Emer, and I wished for the same. She could not keep a tear from slipping down her face. Well met, friend. Deirdre held out her hands. They were welted with bee stings, chapped with cold, covered with scratches. Emer stepped forward and clasped Deirdre's hands. Yes, was all she said. They embraced then, and the breeze danced about them, whipping their cloaks together, red and blue. Behind each of them, the warriors stilled and whispered. The chieftains waved their men back. Each one strode to the center of the field, where their wayward daughters stood, hair tangling together, faces bright with hope. There would be no war today. Nor was there, not for generations. Not until the last of the red thread and the blue thread frayed and faded and finally let go, whirling away from the tree into a night filled with wind and stars, and the memory of two girls standing arm in arm against the tide. I hope you enjoyed listening to The Tree of Fate and Wishes by Anthea Sharp, narrated by Karyne Norton. If you want to read more by Anthea, go to fiddleheadpress.com to find more of her books. You can also check out her upcoming Kickstarter for Crown of Sea and Storm, a standalone novel with echoes of The Little Mermaid and a dash of Norse folktales. I'll have a direct link for it in the show notes. If you have a story you'd like to hear on the podcast, whether it's your own or someone else's, let me know. Readers can submit recommendations or requests on our contact page at findingfantasyreads.com/contact, and authors can find the application form there as well. Thank you all for listening, and happy reading.